Some of our viewers may be familiar with the Twitter account Libs of TikTok, which takes videos posted by kind of cringy liberals on TikToks, a lot of like, I'm queer, gender questioning, or explaining things, or some of it like I'm teaching this in schools, that kind of thing. And this account aggregates them, makes fun of them. So that's what Libs of TikTok is. Now, the Washington Post has just come out with this big kind of takedown profile of the author of Libs of TikTok, exposing who she is. So this was an anonymous account until now, and this article contains information on who she actually is. She's a real estate
apparently
agent.
With a little digging, her contact information was attached to one of her accounts. But yes, this has been characterized as a doxing by Taylor Lorenz, who is now a Washington Post journalist and who has in the past been the target of some degree of online harassment. And some people are calling into question whether it is hypocritical of her to, out the identity of this person when she has been the subject to the kind of, pushback that this person is now going to get having been named.
Taylor Lorenz, so this Washington Post author, is kind of known for speaking out against all the harassment she claims she's faced, all of this angry messages she's gotten. She's spoken out about it. She was interviewed on, I think, MSNBC about it. Yeah. She's clashed with people like Glenn Greenwald, who's
Tucker Carlson has done many segments on her. I mean, look, there is definitely, I think, an outsized interest in Taylor Lorenz as a reporter. Now, whether or not she's also now kind of feeding into that by going after some of the drivers of the kind of anti-liberal hysteria in terms of this account, I think that's an open question. It is undoubtedly a reactionary impulse to report on this kind of account when this is very common. Like every political ideology has some version of an account that takes the excesses, the worst aspects of their opposing party's political position and highlights it to make fun of. I mean, there's 1,000,001 Karen accounts talking about, uptight conservative, racist people saying all kinds of things in shopping malls to wait staff to in parks and all of that kind of thing. And there is a question, I think, of perhaps what the journalistic value of that is. Now, people would argue that this account is different, that they are intentionally targeting vulnerable members of our community, LGBT people specifically. It seems like it takes videos of folks and frames it in not the most flattering light,
But it takes videos that people willingly posted to TikTok. Sure. It's not taking surreptitious video. It's not taking things people just recorded to talk to their friends or something, or videos that didn't have permission to share. It's taking things that people, willfully said, I'm declaring this to the world in the public square. So it's just taking their own words, and which a lot of people...
Yeah, well, as a leftist, it's frustrating to me because, and this was an issue I encountered all the time on the campaign. There is a style of politics that wants to take kind of a maximalist view of what people's concerns are and have a certain kind of culture war battle, whereas another group of people would say, well, a primary concern facing trans women or trans people, generally speaking, is that 1 out of every 5 experiences homelessness. Let's talk about this economic policy. Let's talk about ending homelessness. Let's talk about whatever, protections we can have for kids who end up fleeing their homes because they don't feel safe and they feel like they're not feel safe, not in that kind of vague internet-y way. Their parents are actually threatening them harm or kicking them out because of their identity. I would prefer to be having a conversation like this, but instead, I think both sides sometimes feed into this idea of, an out there, pink-haired Oberlin student that is easy, who is valid and should be able to live their lives, but is easy to kind of make fun of.
Well, yeah, but I'm most interested in the journalistic principle here.
Yeah.
Taylor has taken the position that it is always wrong to dox people, to invite harassment against people, and I wonder if she has thought through whether what she is doing is not that exact thing by revealing someone, which is something she's done in previous reporting. She famously revealed one of the far-right anti-Muslim, Pamela Geller. She did a report a long time on Pamela Geller's daughters, who were these teen influencers on social media or something, and people didn't know they were Pamela Geller's daughters, but they were probably embarrassed they were Pamela Geller's daughters, and she wrote this thing about how they're they don't disclose that, but it was like, why? Does it matter, really? That kind of, so, but she seems to criticize this kind of thing when it is done to her or when it's done to others, but it is, now maybe she has some rationale for why this is different and this is necessary. So I tweeted at her to ask her, because look, I'm friendly with her. I don't agree with her on everything. I'm sure she doesn't agree with me on especially on my COVID stuff. She seems very COVID cautious compared to me. So people who disagree can be friendly, and she has been a good friend of mine. But I asked her on Twitter, what she, how she would. Well, I'll read exactly what I said. I said, oh, we have it on screen. Yeah. So I said, I ask in genuine good faith, how do you square this sort of reporting with your stated position that doxing is never okay? It seems you are likely to direct no small amount of harassment toward this woman as a result of exposing her. And Taylor just responded that I should read the story, which of course I did. And I don't think the story grapples with that question.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime you report on anything, there is an expectation, a likelihood that the subject of reporting is going to get additional attention. So if the standard is you cannot report on something because you're going to draw attention to somebody and potentially harassment, well, that would end the journalism profession altogether.
But I do I do a lot of reporting on campus incidents and the free speech battles and, crazy student activists shouting people down. And over time, I have actually tended to move away from naming the people doing the shouting down, because I realized that while I'm critical of what they're doing, the blowback to them is worse than what I would want them to suffer. So I've tended to just not. I describe what happens, but I don't include link. Now, if it's the student council president coming up and making a statement, then maybe you do it. But they're difficult.
The argument, I think, would be that this person has a very popular account that's been, retweeted and amplified by a number of really big media personalities, that they are kind of seeking out this level of notoriety, and that they are, this is obviously subjective, but engaging in a kind of political speak that invites, at least if you can dish it out, you should be able to take it, I think would be some people's argument. Do you think it matters?
I don't think that's a crazy argument, right?
The character of this person's account makes a difference here.
It matters how much, how much do we value the ability to contribute to the public square anonymously in this kind of Publius sense, right? This came up with, Slate Star Codex. This is a popular, he's on Substack now as Astral Codex 10 or something. A popular writer in the rationalist community. He's a psychologist, but he was anonymous for years and years and years. Very, very prolific blogger who migrated to Substack. And the New York Times did a profile of him like a year ago, or wanted to do a profile of him, and they told him they were going to name him, and he wanted to remain anonymous. And there was this big kind of, so he complained about this coming profile, that it was going to wreck his anonymity. And he was saying, this wrecks my ability to do my profession because I write and blog about psychiatry issues and I'm involved in the practice. And it was a whole debate over whether, this is someone who is making these meaningful contributions. I quite like his writing. And should the New York Times do that? Or, who gets the virtue of continued anonymity? And I don't think there are easy answers to some of these questions, but it should definitely be discussed.
And it does seem true, however you feel about it, that if Taylor had written this article without the doxing piece, without the naming aspect of it, and some people are going to dispute that this is exactly what doxing is. Some people will say if you don't put their address and really put them in harm's way,
you put their name in. Their name wasn't out there before. This person's absolutely going to get death threats and harassment in their emails and their letter.
As Taylor has gotten, not that
apparently somebody visited this person's house. That is a detail in the story. They went to their house to confirm it was them.
Yeah. So. Well, it does seem true that she could have written the story and it been similarly powerful without that aspect of it, and maybe would have. This is a calculation for journalists to make going forward. Maybe would have had more credibility and taken on face value without this side discourse about whether Taylor's the real one and the wrong because she doxed someone. Yeah. Something to consider.
We'll have more Rising after this.